It is time for us to hit social media for our hashtag segment. For that, we'd like to welcome in Landon Swan, the co-founder of LikeFolio.com. Good morning to you, Landon. And we also have Jenny Horn alongside us as well here in studio. Good morning to you as well, Jenny. So a little bit of market weakness here, but not seeing that spill over quite yet into Dropbox. Dropbox, the one that we're going to talk about today, symbol DBX.
Yes, and they're up, like you just mentioned, not the weakness there. They're up almost 1% on the day, but this doesn't really matter because since their IPO, they're down roughly 50%. They IPO'd in June of 2018, so the picture for them has been grim. You can see they had a little bit of a sell-off a few months ago, and they're not really doing that well since. This is only like a $18 stock, so that you keep that in mind, but they are doing a lot of things ahead of their earnings, and their earnings are post-market today. They have really done a lot of things to eat into their margins, it seems like, as of lately. They have introduced new features like Dropbox Spaces, paper and extensions. They've integrated with apps like Zoom and Slack. So they're really doing a lot of things to then, they're spending money to then grow, but I don't know if it's paid off. Like I mentioned, 50% down in just, a year and a half. So that's obviously not a good thing for the shares. And our first tweet is from our very own Tom White, who says, Dropbox reports after the close with an expected move of plus or minus 10%. Shares are down over 50% from post-IPO highs in June of 2018. Spruce Point Capital calls them a box of empty promises. I loved that. And sees 25 to 60% downside. So Spruce Point has issued a strong sell on the shares, Landon. And honestly, when I was searching on Twitter this morning, I couldn't find a relevant tweet from, I kid you not, the last time I saw a relevant tweet was, I think, 2017, so 3 years ago. And I really never have this much difficulty finding tweets, as I think my Twitter stalking skills are pretty high. I even had to ask our producer to help me find tweets. So what are you seeing in Dropbox? Because I'm curious to know what you're polling, because I had such a hard time finding relevant tweets.
Yeah, well, we've actually got a lot of people talking about Dropbox, but when you look at, this is a chart of happiness, very steady over the years. I think around 69% happy right now, which is actually much better than some of the competitors. For example, iCloud, I think, is around 48%. People are more frustrated with that. But when we look at, the number of users talking about buying Dropbox or becoming users for the first time, purchase intent, we call that. It's been growing over the last few quarters, but it's actually down a little bit. And so one of the things that we're a little bit concerned about are, this last quarter. I think the street's looking for maybe a 3% increase in revenue quarter over quarter. We've got purchase intent down a little bit, I think about 8%. And so we've been seeing growth, and the revenue's been growing, but for this particular quarter, it's the first bar in a while that's down, and there's a little bit of concern there. And so, the shares are off quite a bit since IPO. I guess it was perhaps overpriced. It's not a huge company. It's about a $7.7 billion market cap, which in tech is not that big. They're still not profitable. They're losing money. But overall, it's fairly strong purchase intent numbers, but this quarter it being off is concerning for this earnings report. This is tough for me to say because I'm a big Dropbox user. I love it. I use it on all my devices, but that's not everyone. And they're one of their biggest competitors is iCloud, and they've got the cult following of Apple. If you've got a device, it's just really easy to use iCloud and just get it on all of the suite of products, all of your devices, and you don't really need Dropbox as much unless you're a power user. So I think they've got a lot of competition, Google, Microsoft, Amazon. A lot of people are in this space, in the cloud space, and selling basically terabytes out on the web. So Dropbox has a lot of competition right now, and this quarter is looking a little iffy.
Landon, you listed a lot of really big hitters as competition to Dropbox, which makes me understand a little clearer now why I don't really know much about Dropbox, because I get my little 99-cent bill every month for storage on my Apple account and all my Google So don't most people just go with the default listing, which is either their iCloud or their Google account? Isn't that it's got to be sucking customers away from Dropbox, other than people like you that really go out of their way to get it, right?
Yeah, I think Dropbox is more of a power user type product. You can do some really cool advanced stuff on it, but for probably 80-90% of people, just having an iCloud account gets it done. You want to have your stuff backed up. You want the ability to share things every once in a while, and that's really it. So I think that again, power users love a product like Dropbox, and it can be more expensive for that. But for the, just for the average person, you're going to go with who you know. And that, again, like you said, those names, Amazon, Google, Microsoft, Apple, yikes, that's tough competition. So it's tough. And cloud storage space continues to get cheaper as more and more computers are being built out there in these farms and server farms. So it's a tough space for Dropbox to be in. I love the company, but our data's not great on it.
Yeah, and Landon, kind of building on all this, like Kevin says, like you read the name, you hear cloud storage, you kind of get an idea, but the more I read about it, and one of the things I do when I don't know a company inside and out, if I'm not familiar with their product, is I just go to the Thinkorswim platform, I go to Analyze, I go to Fundamentals, and I read on the company profile what it is. And it sounds like it's also got a little bit of a collaboration side to it as well, so I can see the comparison with Google Docs. The one thing that I kind of building on what Kevin said is they're going against some companies that one are tough hitters, but this isn't their primary business. So they can potentially, provide a better service, but they're going to have to actually go out there and win that business, as opposed to, you just log into your Apple phone or your Google phone and you're just automatically going to be enrolled into those particular, cloud storage or collaboration platforms. This is one that requires a little bit more effort for them to actually get business. But it sounds like from your happiness that once they're over there, you yourself already mentioned being a fan, that people tend to like the offering once they've actually made that switch.
Right, and I think, honestly, that 5 years ago it was better to be a Dropbox investor. They weren't public then, but it's a different world 5 years ago because they were kind of the leader in this, I think, coming out with a lot of cool features that no one else had. And now it's by default. It's on iOS 11 iCloud, and it's more advanced, and it's getting more advanced every day, competing with Dropbox. And so it's a tough space, I think, for Dropbox. And yes, the features are amazing. Collaboration's amazing. I mean, some of the stuff I could go on and on about how cool the Dropbox features are, but it's unless you're seeking that out, then you're just going to be okay with whatever comes on your phone or your devices, and most likely that'll get the job done for most people.
Yeah, and Landon, I think you make a really good point there, because I think that's sometimes where we get caught up as investors or traders, is that we love products, but when you're making an investment or a trade, you're actually trading this particular company's financial situation. And so that kind of leads me to where, we have to start thinking about this, because if I would have just read this company profile, I heard cloud storage, I heard cloud space, and I would have said this stock's got to be going to the moon like every other stock in the software space, but you're not seeing that. And obviously your data, a little bit of a concern as well.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly right. I mean, it's in the cool space where you would think it's going to have really big PE ratios and tons of growth priced in, but you got to price in that competition, and it is stiff. It is severe competition, big players. And again, it's not the primary business for any one of their competition, but they all have integration points into everyone's life where it just makes it easier to just go ahead and use those features. And so you have to seek out Dropbox. So I think that's tough for them. I think that a strategic partnership is what they need to become really relevant in the future. So long term, I'm a little concerned, and definitely concerned for this earnings report.
Yeah, and I think you all make a really good point about the competition. So when you look at Apple, Dropbox, and Google, they all are charging $9.99 a month for 2 terabytes of space. So they're all on a very similar price point, but Dropbox, what I saw, which seems like a complete headwind for the company, is they're actually the pushiest about encouraging users to pay to upgrade. So they only offer 2 gigabytes for free, versus I was looking at my iPhone, my iCloud, I get 200 gigabytes for 99 cents. So I'm like, of course, I'm going to do exactly what Landon says. I'm going to use whatever's easiest on my device, and also a cheaper price point. I think that's what it comes down to. Everyone's going to use the cloud, but how can you use it for the cheapest with the most space? I mean, the most bang for your buck, I guess, which kind of goes into my next tweet, which says, I honestly don't know how anyone can put up with Google Docs or Drive. I get the lock-in aspect, but those apps are terrible in comparison to Dropbox or even iCloud/iWork offerings. So Landon, I'm curious, because you have an allegiance to Dropbox, but is this because you don't have an iPhone, because you're not an iCloud user? I mean, is that where your allegiance lies?
No, it really has a lot of really cool features. One of them, for example, is what they call selective sync, where I've got like 5 terabytes of data across all my devices, but I decide at work I only need these few folders, and at home I only need these few, and on my phone I want these few. They're all accessible with one click, but they don't take up actual storage on those devices, which is really cool. And we've got shared folders across our company for all the reports that we put out. So there's some really neat features, but it's power user type stuff, and you just don't need it. Most people don't need that type of power.
So how will they go about growing their paid user base? Because as of third quarter, they only have 14 million paid users, which to me seems very small. I mean, you're one of a very small market cap there.
I am. I'm an early adopter, and I'm going to hold on to Dropbox. But yeah, as an investor, definitely concerned. I think they need some kind of strategic partnership where it becomes the default for some user base. It's not going to be Apple, of course, but maybe someone else, or potentially as an acquisition. So I think they've got to get it to where they are the default choice for some type of user base. They've got to find someone to partner with, I think.
Landon, right now S&P is sinking a little bit, down 44, so basically sank about 25 points since we started talking to you. But as we wrap up this Dropbox conversation,
yeah, I was going to say, they didn't like your Dropbox statement.
I didn't mean for that to sound that way. But I want to wrap up the Dropbox conversation and make a quick comparison to maybe something like Slack. Is there a concern when they're kind of a single product offering going against these giant companies that really their only chance is maybe, like you said, a strategic partnership or even an acquisition for some of these companies? As, you know, let's face it, they're just not, it's not a fair fight.
Yeah, I think they have to be excellent at what they do, and then they've got to fend off the competition. I think Slack, and another one that I'm a big user of, they're in a different position because there's no default Slack on the iPhone, right? That is actually something that's sort of unique, and so I think that Slack is in a much better position to defend its excellence, whereas Dropbox is a better product than all of the competition, but it's just the default for so many companies or for so many users that to not use Dropbox. And so as far as Slack versus Dropbox, as far as market viability goes, definitely Slack over Dropbox because of that competition factor.
And then going into earnings, Landon, obviously concerns in the data here, but the stock sold off so much, 10% move being priced in. Do you guys have a lean either way?
Yeah, we're leaning bearish. The sell-off, I would love to be short at a higher price, obviously, but just the overall concerns about purchase intent being down this quarter versus market expectations for revenue up, I think that there's a chance they miss. And even though the stock has been selling off and expectations are lower, I do think that if they miss, there's a lot of pessimism, like Jenny's first tweet talked about, in this company overall. So there could be a sell-off if they do miss.
Alrighty, we'll find out what happens. S&Ps look to be have put in a bottom, at least for short term here, about 10 points off the lows. But Landon, good stuff as always, and we'll find out what happens.
I'll take credit for that.
On that earnings release. And yes, thanks for putting the bottom in there. But thanks to Jenny as well.